Dr. Seth Serxner, thank you for coming and welcome to In the Naad.
Thank you so much, Taylor. Really happy to be here.
So, I just finished your book, The Wellbeing Effect, last night.
Excellent.
And what a great read. It just came out in June, is that correct?
That's correct. Thanks for taking the time.
Of course. So, now let me ask you, I know what the impetus of the book was, but will you tell our listeners a little bit about your story?
Yeah, so my story is I've been in this kind of well-being space for my entire career, mostly working with big companies, trying to help them with their employees to keep them healthy and productive, and in fact, sometimes contain healthcare costs. But as I started working with leaders in the organization and sharing thoughts around well-being, they said, you know what, Seth, we'd like you to share those with our employees. And especially during COVID, I started doing big webinars to employees, talking to them about issues of well-being and resilience and self-care and emotional health. And that kind of led me to write the book.
Well, it was great, and I thought, it's a nice, easy read, so I don't think it's challenging, but it's palatable. Um, and it seems I couldn't help thinking while I was reading your story and about your ski accident, which was sort of the impetus, um, that a lot of teachers, such as yourself, like Joe Dispenza, have had similar experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I had started the book before my ski accident, my big crash, but I like to call it well-being refocused, so to speak, right? All of a sudden, something like that happens to you, and you are focused. There's nothing like pain and people around you, and just kind of a rethinking of the whole point of life when something like that happens to you.
Right, I like how you talk about the ripple effect. And when we take risks, we don't generally think how it's going to impact the people in our lives, but it does.
That was
Everything has a ripple effect, you know?
Yeah, I was thinking about you and how you think about vibrations and resonance, and I was thinking about that in terms of ripples and sound waves and people waves and emotional waves and conscious waves. And it did make me rethink though my actions and how they ripple through to other people.
It really is incredible. We're just living in this sort of vortex where everything is energy and you can't escape. It's sort of like systems thinking. One action always results in many others.
Completely. I think one of the things that's been blowing my mind these days is that even root systems, right? Plants are
You mean
communicating
trees,
to each
right?
other, trees. I mean, there's really so much communication going on that we're not aware of, right?
I think we're just beginning to even touch the tip of the iceberg. I mean, learning how trees communicate and respond and send signals out to each other. It's really beyond what we would imagine. But I think our minds are expanding as well. And people like us who dig into this stuff, I don't think there are many surprises.
Well, I agree. And I think what's interesting about what I like to think about as I try to translate science to practice, and when I think about what's really meaningful for people and their health and their well-being, sure, good diet, sleep, all that stuff, that's great. But it's these meaningful ripples, these meaningful connections, these sense of purpose in life that has a really powerful impact.
Among the many things that you say in the book that were really touched home, one of them was that wellness is quantity of life, and well-being is the quality of life. I mean, it sounds so simple, but it is actually so profound. Will you go into that a little bit for us?
Well, I appreciate you commenting on that. Uh, my background in public health and health promotion was always about these ideas of what we call risk factors. What are the things that are likely to put you at higher risk of chronic diseases and premature death? That was kind of the wellness space for a long time. And then we started to look into things like blue zones and hope and joy and these other issues, purpose. And we started to see that, you know what, that's all great, but it's really about the quality. So for me, I started to shift that paradigm from the wellness paradigm to the well-being paradigm. Exactly as you say, quantity is great, but without the quality, what's the point?
Now, you do seem to stick a little bit into in a traditional paradigm at the way you look at things. Now, I'm going to ask you a question that you don't have to answer, but I would like you to. Are there any things that you wouldn't necessarily want to write in this book that you do think affect one's consciousness? I don't know, psychedelics, a walk in the park, fasting. Are there any things of that nature that you find improve one's well-being?
Well, there's so much, Taylor, as you know, things like intermittent fasting and different kinds of nutrients and supplements. People go way deep in that, and I think it's great. The work in psychedelics and ketamines and different things, and what's happening with mushrooms and all the rest. Also, real potential. The reason that my lane was a little narrow in this is
Corporate?
corporate. Thank you very much.
Right.
So the one thing that I would say that is emerging is spirituality. Even companies are being willing to talk a little bit about the role of faith and spirituality in one's health. I'm not quite sure they're ready to cover some of those other things on their
Listen,
insurance.
it is a movement. And I've noticed that corporations are doing that, and that is a huge step in the right direction. It says so much about the consciousness of the elevation of consciousness, even in corporate environments. Now, it would be great to see it in governmental environment.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, I think there's a difference between spirituality and faith and religious. And so while I have anybody, pick what you want to be, that's fine. But sometimes that overrides, kind of personal values and behaviors. And so the kind of political piece is a little tricky, when we
So
start to
you're
come.
saying it's really hard to interweave religion with spirituality?
I think many people do that. I think
I
when you get
Right.
to policy, and you get into corporations, I don't think companies want to say which religion you need to be or which, all of those things. That gets more tricky.
So for me, when I think of spirituality, religion has absolutely nothing to do with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it could be, it's actually the polar opposite as far as I'm concerned. Dogma and it can get pretty dark.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, in many ways, religion has been the source of many a war on this planet.
So philosophies that you live by, what would you say are some key philosophies that you live by?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I mean, part of what I talk a lot about and others do as well is what's your purpose? What's your why on the planet? And for me, my why came to me early and it was to help others, in more of a social activism way, but to help others. What can I do? So I started more in the criminal justice and mental health space and got more into this physical and then the well-being space. And then there are guidelines for me like tread lightly, leave it better than you found it. Silly, I've been a vegetarian for pushing 50 years, and
So am I.
it was all environmental. I mean, I do feel for animals and that piece of it, but it was really to like go easy on the resources.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, for me, one of the biggest, something I talk about quite often is glyphosate. And so while I'm not eating the meat for the environment, apparently California is the biggest abuser of glyphosate of all the states in the country. Did you know that?
I didn't know that, but we do raise a lot of cattle here, so travel the I-5 and you see these lots. It's not pretty.
No, it's really touches the heart, doesn't it? It gets me.
Yes, absolutely.
And I just feel like when we eat, so for me, there's also a spiritual element. Like to eat any animal that has been raised under those conditions and it carries this intense pain body with it, I feel like I'm ingesting their pain. Because as you know, we believe energy doesn't go away, right? So it's being transferred into my body. And I don't want that. I want to live as clean and free of any of the, I don't want anything emotional or physical going on down there because we know what emotions do to the body.
I'm very aligned with that, and I think of like even Temple Grandin to at least make it more humane if we are doing these things. So, again, there's so many people that I talk to, they're like, Seth, I could never be a vegetarian. And I said, well, just maybe you can cut back. Maybe you can think about humane, you know.
You talk about that in the book.
Yeah, exactly.
Little steps.
Little steps, right? These are things because behavior change, I don't know, Taylor, how many types of behavior you've tried to change over your life. It's hard for people, right? And nobody teaches us how to change our behavior, whether it's your diet or meditation or yoga. And that's where I try to just make it safe for people, non-threatening messages.
I don't think your book is threatening or would give us pause to any questions. I mean, it's very straightforward. It's very straightforward to someone who, especially to someone who it's not palatable for, you make it really palatable. And I think that that's important because so many people are trying to make that shift. I mean, how many people do you speak to and they say, I wish I could meditate, I just can't?
Yeah,
Well,
it,
this helps you get there. They do say, and I don't know if you believe this, I do, that it takes 21 days to change a habit, meaning you can turn a bad habit into a good habit or a good habit into a bad habit or just create a new habit in 21 days. What is your thought on that?
I think it really varies. I've read things where it can take actually much longer. I think one way to consider this is to think about when it shifts from what I do, like I run, to I'm a runner. Like really shifting to your sense of who you are, not what you do. And that's when habits really change in my perspective. So there are some things that, people who are addicts, they talk about every day. It's still a challenge, right? And I've
Right, they're never sober. They're always what do they say? I'm in
I'm in
recovery.
recovery.
They're constantly in recovery. Now, I don't love that thought pattern.
I,
Because if you tell yourself in your recovery, then you're in recovery. If you tell yourself you're sober, then you're sober. So that's not a thought pattern that I necessarily subscribe to. Although I'm not gonna fight a system that's been working. So
Well, I'm with you though. I kind of I appreciate that too, and I feel that's a little hard to stand up every day and say, "Hi, I'm so and so. I'm an addict or I'm in recovery." Well, maybe you're more than that. Maybe you're something else, but again, it's really complicated and there's so many individual differences in all these behaviors. And I just want people to not feel judged. I really want it to be a safe
exactly.
place to try things and to understand that even as you are figuring it out, you're just figuring it out, right? It's not a right or wrong and all and nothing. You're figuring it out, you're tweaking, and you're iterating.
Yeah, we don't ever like to be in that gray zone. I think as human beings, it's much easier to go positive or negative.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Neutral seems to be a really difficult space. And I think neutral and flow state are probably the most important spaces to occupy.
I'm so glad you brought that up because, again, when I was thinking about some of your work and philosophies, the whole idea of flow state, really big, right? I mean, that's when you get the vibrations going, you know.
Are you a meditator?
Not formally, but as I was outside kind of preparing for this, quiet for about 5, 10 minutes, I thought, oh, I guess I do meditate.
Oh, yeah. Were you
Yeah,
outdoors?
yeah.
Yeah. Next time, just take your shoes off, walk barefoot. You'll be
I
there.
was. I was barefoot and
Grounding. I think grounding is so
I
important.
have a friend who's really into it, and he was telling me about it. I go, oh, well, I guess I do that because I'm barefoot all the time. Flip-flops is the biggest shoe I most time I wear a shoe.
They say that rubber sole shoes were the worst thing to happen to mankind.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But I like, when we were talking about spirituality and meditation, I am a runner. I like the outside,
That's a
and
meditation.
it's huge meditation. I tell people it's more for
That's a
my head than my
meditation. You
heart.
are you are in the zone. The coherence is there. I mean, for me, you talk about coherence right in the
Yeah,
book.
exactly.
And I think that coherence is probably the most important aspect of manifestation.
How do you think about coherence? Say more about that.
So I think that having alignment between the heart and the mind, because if you're just in your mind, what you're doing is you're cutting off your vagus nerve and your heart, which makes it virtually impossible for your manifestations to come through. It's easier to be just connected to your heart than it is to your head. I mean, it's not easier, it's probably better because the head cuts you off from the love and the passion. And we can't just think about manifestations. And I think that that's one thing that they don't teach us in these books like The Secret. The heart and the mind have to be aligned, they work as a unit.
Yeah, I really love that.
So for intellectuals, it's really hard to manifest.
Right. And I mean, it's funny though, I'm not sure. Some people are really in their head and some people are really in their heart. And I like that definition of coherence is this connection between the two.
Right. I think the connection between the two is essential.
Yeah, when I was also reading about the idea of coherence, it also had to do with somehow making sense of the world and your context.
Yes.
And maybe the way you're talking about this, it has to do with not only intellectualizing the world, but somehow feeling the world in your heart in the right way.
Oh, I love that. We have to feel the world. Do you believe that we're living in a matrix? I'm gonna go really off grid with you now. Sorry about that,
No,
doctor.
I love it. I love it.
I'm sure you're not comfortable in this
No, you
space.
gave me a heads up. You know what I believe? I believe that I don't know everything, and there's a lot more to discover. And I really do believe that there are, when we are out of this physical body, our energy is still there, moving to somewhere. So that much I feel pretty comfortable with. I'm not quite sure. When you say matrix, how do you think about it?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that talking to a doctor, first of all, I think humility is a superpower. And as a doctor, you don't see a lot of humble doctors, but you really are very humble in your opinions. You're not assertive. You don't push your thoughts on anyone. I really appreciate that, and it's very unusual. Um, even in the spiritual community, it's really hard. You feel people putting their subconscious thoughts into you, but I do think we're living in a matrix.
And
I think we're like a
yeah,
quantum
yeah,
matrix.
yeah.
And where several parallels are existing at one time. And I think that we can shift those. So your thought patterns at any time can shift from, as you know, from positive, from negative, and then once you're in a positive thought stream, sort of things change for you. You notice that your luck is better, your happiness is better, your heart feels more filled, versus the opposite. And both are true. And I think that we vacillate between both. And I think that more that we pay attention to our subconscious and we listen to our thoughts and our breath, we can become more aligned with sort of that positive trajectory. And it's life changing. It's sort of like catching a wave. And yes, it does crash, like all waves. Like we're no one's ever going to be happy all the time, but we expect that. That's part of the journey. But as long as you know that when that wave crashes, you can catch another one. It's really a matter of perspective and reframing your point of view.
Well, as a water person and someone who surfs and skis and does all those things, I like your metaphors. I will, uh, I will say the literature, the science is very strong on well-being, quality and quantity of those who shift that mindset that you're talking about, both hope and positivity and optimism. And there are some differences. For example, positivity that's kind of generalized versus optimism, which is more of just an overall attitude of being, thinking that things can be good. And then hope even breaks down to this idea of agency, like having a path towards what you're trying to and a clear vision to what you want.
And that you have some
And
control
you have
over it.
control.
Not you cannot control it, but you control your response to it.
100%. 100%. That's what they say
and
about
right.
stress, right? You can control how you appraise it and how you respond to it.
And we know what stress does to the body. I mean, I just, for example, went through a really hard time. Doesn't sound that big of a deal, but I'm a single mom and my daughter went off to
That's
school.
huge.
And I could see a physical shift. Aside from aging, I was getting stomach aches and my skin was breaking out. And I thought, you know what? I better shift the way I'm thinking about this. I was not abandoned by my daughter. I did not lose a daughter. Right? My daughter, I just set a bird free and she'll come back. And what I realized in that moment was if I'm seeing this on the outside of my body, what's going on in the inside is terrifying. And I wasn't, I know how dangerous stress is. So I changed my point of view pretty much instantaneously
Well, it's a big insight.
and
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah. No, it was funny. I was in a conversation yesterday, and someone was talking to me about headaches, and in particular, one person was having a lot of stomach issues, and they're trying to do elimination diets and all these other things. And I said, but you know what's going on with their family and the relationship that they have? That's probably more of a root cause.
And we don't even look at root causes anymore. When was the last time you went to a doctor and he said, a traditional doctor, and they asked you, what's going on at home? What's going on with your stress? What are your thoughts on autoimmune diseases in general? Or you can be specific, but
Well, they're obviously real, but again, let's get to the root cause of how your body is reacting to what it views as toxic. And it could be more of a psychological or a social toxin than a kind of an actual physical toxin or some kind of nutrient or something.
so do you think we can recover from autoimmune diseases?
Yeah, I hope so.
Because
Yeah,
I have.
yeah, no, I think there's tremendous, and it's funny, as we talk about some of this, there's a lot of science around it, a lot of anecdotes around it. Even me, when I was trying to heal myself, and for those who haven't read the book yet, I fractured my entire pelvis, shattered my hip. It was pretty racked up, kind of very dangerous stuff. But as I was in bed, I would picture myself breathing and the breath going all the way through my pelvic area, and I would picture it healing. Now, I don't know if that helped, but as members of the tribe say, it couldn't hurt. It was good.
Well, we know that placebo effect
Yeah, even that.
works. So we know that the mind is a very powerful thing. I would say it does work. I would say focusing energy, using oxygen to oxygenate the body and help cleanse the blood and deliver nutrients to that part of your body, especially as we get older. It doesn't happen as quickly or as
I think
easily.
though, to your point, it has to be pretty intentional. And again, I know you're into
Absolutely.
breath work and things like that. I am too. Just being conscious of your breath, being conscious of what's happening. It seems kind of cosmic that you could actually direct, the body's, defense system to these places. But of course you can. Why wouldn't you be able to?
Well, we know, some of these people who have had terrible nervous damage, neurological damage have recovered.
And I'm a big believer in alternative and complementary. So I would never rule out Western medicine. And there are things that it's very good for. And it's also very good to complement those with other practices.
Agree 100%. I'm always scared when people come up with their own holistic program because I think you can work in
Yeah.
combination. I don't know what I was listening to. I was reading a book the other day and it talked about how there's this interesting dichotomy between Eastern and Western. Like there's this I'm sorry, this passage of what's it called when you go? Oh God, I'm going to edit this, so don't worry. Where Americans and Europeans believe that they have to go to India in order right after
Rite of
college,
passage.
and they
Yeah.
get their meditation in, and they sort of have their spiritual awakening, while at the same time, Indians are coming here for education and
Yeah,
for
it's interesting
medical.
contrast.
So there's something to that, right? I mean, we work together, combine the two, it's way more effective. And the word I was looking for was rite of passage. But there's this rite of passage where we want to go to India, and it's wonderful, and explore our spirituality. But you have to realize that on their side, they're looking for what we have,
Yeah.
which tells you that the combination is really beautiful.
It's really important. And I think there's a movement of food as medicine going on right now. Well, I don't love
Yes.
the terms food as medicine because nobody likes to take their medicine, kind of puts this clinical model on it. I do very much believe that food is directly related to our health and our spirituality and our connection and our culture. And it's so rooted in all of this. And I'm glad that that's starting to happen, that people are looking to, hey, might affect what I eat, affects my health. Yay.
In the book, you have a phrase for that, right? It's like you are not you are what you eat, but what do you say?
I'm blanking on exactly what the comment was,
It's
but it
something
is it
along
is
those
something
lines.
along those lines, and I do truly believe that it's uh, it's pretty obvious, and there's some there's lots of politics around it, but some of the things that RFK Jr. is saying around the food system that we have in this country and what people are eating does have a big role in the health of Americans.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir because I am a big Kennedy fan. So I'm just putting that right out on the line. I'm also a big fan. I don't know if are you familiar with Dr. Zach Bush and
No,
what
I'm
he's
not.
doing? Wow, he's incredible. I would do a little investigative journey on him. He's really concerned about
Mm,
glyphosate
yeah.
and how that's impacting us and our biomes. And I think he's incredible. He gave up. He was an oncologist, and he actually gave up his medical practice completely. I think he gave up his
Mm,
license to
mm.
practice. And I think he's created quite a bit of a movement. He's hand in hand with Kennedy, but he's just fascinating, and he presents very
Well, I'll have
well.
to check him out. I will want to circle back to Kenny a bit. There are many things that I strongly disagree with him on, including vaccines and kind of
All vaccines?
we could go down the list.
Don't you think? Do you think all vaccines are created equal?
I think that we could go down the list, but I think many of them that are being kind of dismissed, and some of the scientific body that he's got around regulating and advising around them has shifted maybe dramatically too far the other way. One could argue that it was one way at some point, but there's really very little to dispute smallpox, polio, these infectious diseases and the impact of vaccines on them. So, it's a
What about his statements on polio? That polio only presented in like one
yeah, we're way off.
percent.
All those numbers, all those
He's way
numbers are
off on
way off.
those. Okay,
Uh, and,
okay.
and it comes
Well,
from us being,
feel
we're,
free to say that because I want to educate people. I don't want them just
yeah, I
listening to
mean, we're
my
so
point of view.
privileged to, many of us have never seen polio. But even Mitch McConnell, he had polio. Even the president and Roosevelt had polio. I mean, these were real things. Iron lungs. When I was growing up, there were people who were in an iron lung. No more.
What do you think of this whole NIH reset?
I think it's a real problem. What I would say is
Oh, it's a slow down. You just said I'm having. You said
a
you think
real
it's a
problem.
real
What I would
problem.
say is I I don't mind examining various issues that the administration is trying to do. I would like to see the strategy and logic and what's replacing it. So to just cancel all clinical research when we know, for example, in the space of cancer, well, you and I have just talked about the importance of complementary and alternatives and other things. There have been huge breakthroughs in cancer that are just being halted right now. It's going to set us back. There are huge breakthroughs in
Well,
blood disease, heart disease, transplants. So much of the clinical infrastructure in this country is funded by federal money. And that's really important to not just yank it, but to figure out if there's an issue with it.
I agree. So my son has spinal
Hmm.
muscular atrophy, and he has been on gene therapy, and he's also on a medication
Okay.
called Spinraza. And we've been waiting for the new dose to be FDA approved, which will essentially either give him his legs back or not. And
Yeah.
they've canceled that. So it's disheartening, obviously. So I feel very similarly to you. There are some things that we know are working, and then there are some things that have sort of spiraled out of control. And so I think we have to cherry pick as opposed to just halt everything. I do think the NIH needs to be better. I think there needs to be a little bit more transparency in what goes on with the
It could be,
NIH.
I mean, it's a massive organization. Look, there's no doubt that there could be some gaps, some fraud, some abuse, some
I
lackadaisical
think
or
it's
whatever. But on the other hand, as being somebody who was part of it and applying for NIH grants, and other people that I work with that are in universities, again, I think, like you say, whether it's cherry picking or just being more strategic and systematic and understanding that we are the envy of the world. Our system, our innovation, medical gold
gold
standard
standard.
clinical trials are are a good thing, and you do those with the infrastructure that we've developed through university partners.
So overall, you
I
think it's
I
a bad thing. You
I
prefer to see them.
I
Yeah.
think I think it's fine to look at it, review grants, review the grant review process. If they're too biased in certain ways, if we wanted to shift our focus towards certain chronic conditions, okay. But fundamental science, fundamental approaches, I think those have been pretty solid.
Goes back to the black and white versus the gray. Like, it doesn't have to be full on. It doesn't have to be a full stop. I mean, we can maneuver in that area that
Well,
needs
and I would love to
maneuvering.
see more funding and focus on some of the things that you and I have just been talking about. Some of the things around lifestyle medicine, food as medicine, visualization.
Well, I think that's what Kennedy's trying to. I mean, he's certainly trying to do that to move into that space.
I
I
think
think.
so, but I haven't heard, and this is kind of, we're getting a little political here, but okay. But what
We
bothers
don't have.
me
I
is
mean,
I've
yeah.
seen no coherent replacement plan, no structural plan. I've seen, like you say, some blunt things, some blunt, fire a bunch of people, replace a bunch. But what's the strategy? What's the philosophy? What are the goals and objectives? What are the metrics? How are we going to go do this?
Do you not think
I
he's
have
laid it
not
out
seen it
well?
at all, and I wish I had,
Interesting. Okay.
because then we could at least have a basis to debate.
Yeah. I feel like I know where he's going, but I've also gone I like him a lot. I go to the dinners and I go to the events and the fundraisers. So I have heard and I listen to all the podcasts and they're
I think he's
quite
a
a
little
bit
loose
out
with
there.
his numbers, to be
Yeah.
kind.
Okay. Even people on my
Yeah,
side seem
yeah.
to feel that way. Yeah. I think he's a little loose and a little
So
loose with
as we
facts.
said, I applaud his sensibilities around lifestyle and food dyes and some of the things he's trying to do in the lifestyle space, and kind of the root cause of why our society, why we have obesity, why we have some of these chronic conditions. All good. I just wouldn't tear down the other side of the infrastructure that, in my opinion, has been working pretty well.
Okay. Um, so now I do take issue with one point in your
Please
book,
do.
and I want to discuss this with you. It's in the
Okay.
sleep category. One of your points was not to sleep with your pets.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, now I
Okay.
feel the exact opposite. And I want to go into this with you because I've read studies that say when you sleep with your pets, lowers your heart rate, your heart assimilates to theirs, oxytocin is released in both of you, and it makes for a better sleep. So, what is the reason that you don't believe one should be
Yeah,
sleeping with their
the
pets?
reason I say that is many people report that their pets keep them awake. Like, I have a cat. I love my cat, but my cat comes in the morning and she walks all over me. She wants, and I lose an hour or two of good sleep. Or there are people that have, dogs, they sleep with their dogs, but, the dogs get up, they move around just like a partner does. And so my point was, well, it is great to sleep with a pet, and I love pets, and the data is super strong, like you say, whether it's sleeping with them, whether they're on your lap, whether they're just in your life, fantastic. They can be a barrier for some people to get a good night's sleep. So
Okay,
we're on the
so we're
same
sort of
page.
on the
You
same
can sleep, your
page.
dog sleeps
I
nicely,
do
great.
think sleep is a real, it is so challenging and it's a hard one to tackle because I read all your points, and while I agree with all of them, I still don't think they're the answer. There are two things that you discussed that I think are very hard to overcome. One is finances, the fear around finances, which you touch on, and the other are sleep, which is why so many of us are on sleeping aids.
So your points are, so with sleep, we both agree sleep's super important, and
And actually hard to solve the sleep problem because it comes
it can
from
be, but
deep
there are
within.
also many what they call sleep hygiene behaviors that people can do to give them a head start. I mean, looking at screens is an issue. Waking up at night, you can't sleep, so you look at your phone for a while. Not, there are many things that you can
Oh
do
God.
to increase the likelihood you'll have a better sleep. Look, if there are problems in your life, you're not sleeping because of something deeper. I get it.
Oh,
But
for
there are many
sure.
people that have bad night's sleep because they eat something before, or they're too caffeinated, or they've been watching screens.
I see
There's
what you're
there's
saying.
things you can do to,
So more superficial sleep issues
for sure.
than the root. Because when you're not sleeping because of
Oh yeah.
those root issues, it's really hard to tackle. I have a lot of friends who struggle with sleep, and my advice to them is maybe you should consider a sleep aid just because the impact of not having sleep on your day to day is intense. It's on your body, on your mind, on your physical output, on your emotional well being.
It's a,
It's a
it's a
big one. The other
yeah.
one that you touched on, yeah, were financials. And I think as we look at the numbers in the world and how quickly stress and lack of sleep, autoimmunes are just growing at rapid rates. Cancer, enormous. And you have to think that this is really these are impacts that are caused by
Look, when I
stress.
was a graduate student,
I think
when
stress
I was a
is the
graduate
game
student,
changer.
most of my work, I worked with a health economist, and we did a lot of research on the economy as stressor. And we did research on the employment rate related to mental health issues, suicidal ideation, all kinds of mental health issues. The economy, financial worries, huge concern for people. And what I wanted to raise was that many wellness programs for years were really into cholesterol, blood pressure, all that stuff. But look, if you're worried about making ends meet, you're not worried about drinking 8 glasses of water a day.
You said that in the book, and I just love that you touched on that because it is so essential to one's well being, and it's
And I
how
think
do
there
we
are
work around
ways,
that?
look, it's tough to make a living. Things are so expensive. But there is something called financial literacy. People understanding how credit cards work, how mortgage works, how car leasing works, how just even to shop differently.
Even how their trading account works. Like so many people are invested in the
No
market and they
idea.
have no
No
idea what
idea.
it's about.
So I think some of us, when I was going away to college, my mom showed me how to balance a checkbook. I still online, but I want to know where the money's going. I talk to a lot of people about this issue. They go, I'm not really sure what my expenses are.
Yeah, because they
It's
close their eyes to
scary.
it because it's
And
scary. It's like not opening the email or not opening the mail. You just don't want to see inside what's inside
And you
because
look
it's
around and people
generally
are
not
driving
great.
nice cars and wearing really nice clothes. And the first thing to do is live within your means. I don't know whether that guy can afford that car or not, but I don't.
Right, because that guy in the convertible Porsche often lives in a studio apartment
So
and he's
I
struggling to
do
pay his
think that's why
bills.
I called that group of well-being items foundational. Sleep, eating, financial, having a sense of creativity. These things are you don't get to go to the next square if you can't kind of ground yourself in those things. And I'm not saying it's easy. The job market's tough, housing's
It's not.
expensive, but
What and creativity
so
is
I
that because
love
of
this
self
one, Taylor. When
expression?
I was looking at it, looking at the literature on all this, I found that human beings, with exception of maybe some animals and we don't really understand, but human beings get depressed if we can't be creative. If we can't have a way to express ourselves, whether it's at work, whether it's home, whether it's art, music, talking to people, fixing things, we need to be creative. It's a really kind of foundational piece of, yeah.
Do you think all
Say
people
that
have
again.
creative outlets? Do you believe that all people have some
I
form of
think people
creative
need to
outlet?
nurture their creative outlets. I think that some people don't have it and it's hard. Again, let's talk about the person who's working that job. It's really tough. They're exhausted. They get home, they're kids, they're this, they're that. Well, I don't have time to, but they do. They could listen to some music on the bus, or they could, do something when they're making the kids lunches to be creative. And people find those ways. When I ask people, what's during COVID, I said, well, how are you being creative? It was so many different ways people were being creative.
So, do you think that overall wealthy people live healthier lives? Seriously, do you think
What
it's
I
an economic
can tell you
thing?
two things is the literature would say that income and health are related. So the more money you have, the better health you have.
Yes.
But that's for
But is it because of health care or is it because of
it's,
lack of stress
good
or it's just
food,
a
it's a safe
combination?
place, it's the foundational kind of basics of life. It's kind of good to know you have a roof over your head and a good meal every day, health insurance, all those
Health
things.
insurance?
Now, we also know it doesn't necessarily guarantee happiness or quality of life by any stretch of the imagination. And it's kind of
Do
I,
you really believe that? I really believe that,
yeah,
but do
I
you really
mean,
believe
let's
that?
face it, there are a lot of people with money that are still looking for purpose and fulfillment and, kind of maybe doing behaviors that they shouldn't do, whether they're addictive behaviors or, a disservice in some way.
Just self
Exactly,
sabotaging
exactly.
behaviors.
So you can quote have it all and be a lonely person. I mean, we haven't touched on social connection and loneliness at all, but we know, and
Oh,
the former Surgeon General wrote a whole, epidemic on loneliness and the importance of social connection. Data says being lonely is worth smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
there's a book. It's called Lost Connections, and I think the
Okay.
writer was Johann Hari. Although I get Hari and Harari mixed up, but it's a deep dive into the emotional impact of our lost connections because we're
It's
tribal
so
people.
big, Taylor. I, for many, many years, I
It's
traveled on a
massive.
plane probably 45 weeks a year for 25 years. And for many, many years, I just wanted to survive, right? I got my routine, I get my thing, I get my lunch, I go to get on the plane, I put my plugs in. And then I realized, wait a second, this is my community. So I started to say hello to the flight attendants, to the TSA people, to the person who's getting me
Embrace
my
it.
coffee. And a little bit, some of those people I saw on a regular basis. So even those light connections, because people worry like how many quality connections do I have? And that literature is very fuzzy, but it's every connection. The person you see, I have a meadow here where I jog and run. Those people I see walking their dogs all the time, just wave to them. That's a connection.
It's a momentary interaction. It's a catching each other's eye. It's a smile. But what it is not is replaced by internet. And when you speak to the youth, they go, well, I remember at one point my kid was like 13
Yeah.
and she said to me, I have a million friends. And she was referring to people on the internet, many of whom she had actually never had a personal interaction with. She's no longer that kid. I mean, she's, a grown woman and she understands the difference. But that was frightening. That was a
Yeah, I
frightening
think as
response.
one of the realizations, and all these things fade, but during COVID, we realized how social we were and how brutal it was to be denied just the normal interactions in a store or anywhere, let alone getting to be with our friends and hug people and all the rest. I think it's very, very important. And I realized it so much again when I had my accident and that social support network came out to me and I felt all that love and energy. And I've talked to people about that too. They go, Seth, do you think, like, if controlled study, if there was the same person with that accident who didn't have that support and you who did, is that why you recovered the way you did? Certainly.
It certainly helped.
Yeah.
I
I
think
mean,
about that all the time because my friend group has gotten smaller and smaller. I mean, they're my closest friends, but I think about that all the time. We need to keep our social network and our support systems.
it's really
They're
important to nurture
invaluable.
them. Even I have two older brothers and, they're in different parts of the country. And when I had my accident, they reached out, of course, and all this stuff. And we said, we should talk to each other more, right? And it's like you have to force it a little bit. Like, what am I going to say? But you get on the phone and all of a sudden you're talking. It's good.
Yeah. So tell me about your book tour. Are you going on one?
Taylor,
What's going on with the
the
book?
whole book thing was new to me, and I am learning a lot about trying to figure out how to get visibility. I have started to reach out to some local bookstores. I live in the Bay Area, so I'll go up to San Francisco. There are a few in Half Moon Bay. Um, I'm going to try to do some reels and bump up my Instagram presence a little bit.
Oh, it's a horror show.
Exactly.
Welcome to the nightmare.
Exactly. So
Welcome
I've
to the
done
nightmare.
more. What I've been trying to do is reach out to people, companies and colleagues that want me to talk to their employees. And so kind of using what's
I would
that?
imagine it's huge out there. I would imagine
Yeah,
it's a
and
very big
again,
business out there
some honorarium is
in
nice, but getting
Techville.
the book in people's hands, again, to circle back to, I just like to help people. Like you said, if the book is kind of non-threatening and kind of a safe way to make a few changes, I would like people to
I
see
think it
that.
is.
So
Are you
no
planning on a
plans
book
yet.
tour or no
I'm
plans yet for
I'm
that?
seeking my network to get help to figure out what that would be like.
Well, let us know because I'd love to have you in person. How do people buy the book? I'm going to put it up
Thank you
again.
so much. It's
How do they
very
find
easy.
it? I think I found it on
Yeah, but
Amazon,
it's on
or I found
Amazon.
it
You
on the
can look
link you
up the
sent me.
Wellbeing Effect. You can look up my last name. I know it's not easy, but Serxner, Serxner, and you will find it. And Amazon, simple. It's $15. It's easy.
And do you have your own website? Do you
I
have like a
do.
website
I
for
do have a
teachings or
website,
where
and
you talk
that's
about? And what is that?
sethserxner.com. And people can check that out. I've got some interviews on there. I posted a well-being quiz, some conversation starters. There's some content, and I'll be growing that over time as well.
Well, we look forward to hearing more from you, and I wish you a
Thank you so
tremendous
much.
amount of success on the book.
It's really great.
People
And speaking
need
of
this kind of
connections,
literature.
lovely connection, and by a mutual friend, we make our connection, and then it continues to grow.
Steven, yeah,
Oh,
he's
he's
a
a connector.
connector. That's what he does. He's got those antenna. He's just one of my favorite
Yeah,
people.
such a
Thank you. Shout out to Stephen Nemeth. Um, okay, wonderful. Well, I appreciate you coming on. It was wonderful having you. Very sage, very
thank
humble,
you.
very
So nice
honest.
to
It
be
was
with you,
lovely.
Taylor. Thank you, everyone.